over expressing devalues it because you might be bumping your expression off of people or in places where it's not welcome, it's not receptive, they're not interested. And so what happens then is that actually expression without containment promotes repression.
Welcome back to the Body Joy After Office Hours podcast. This week, I am chatting with such a dear friend and colleague, Cosmo Means, based in Victoria, Canada. He is the thriving firekeeper and life force behind the Himeros project, a father, a husband, a full-time women's erotic body worker with Back to the Body. Cosmo and I graduated the somatic sex educator program back in 2016, and just the next year, he began a journey into the immense and life giving field of supporting people in their pleasure. Cosmo has logged over 2,000 hours in immersion containers with women, working within a triadic model alongside female support and therapists. In our conversation, Cosmo shares about his transition from chefing work, how his work looks today, and how, with all of their hats and family, he and his partner approach intimacy and connection. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Cosmo, welcome.
Hi, what's up?
Thanks so much for joining the conversation today. I'm just going to go right into the story of how you went from chefing to erotic exploration.
Yeah. Well, you're a part of it, so it's a good place to start.
I know
Um,
you and I knew each other back in, 2006, something like that. You had a restaurant in Victoria. I had a
mhm.
restaurant in LA, and we were chefing with another chef at this raw spirit festival. Remember those days? And yeah, so we went back there a couple years, feeding like thousands of people all
Yeah,
plant-based raw food, which was wild. Um and then there was a couple years, at least this is how I remember it. It was a couple years I get a message on Instagram from you of like, "Hey, Mango, I noticed," because Mango was my chef name back then. "Hey, Mango, I noticed that you're transitioned away from food and you're doing this other thing." And I remember you kind of asking me, "Hey, do you have any resources?" And then I said to you something like, "Yeah, Catherine Jesse, one of my early inspirations, lives in Canada." And then you're like, "Yes, I'm going to have lunch with her next week." And so we were on this similar
yeah,
trajectory of transitioning from delicious live food to delicious sensuality and erotic expression. So, yeah, share with people like how you kind of got into that and what was the impetus.
yeah, wonderful. So yeah, so kind of like people often ask, well, what's the crossover? It seems like a big jump from, you know, being a chef to being a sex educator. Uh, and the way that you kind of described it is like the jump is actually it makes a lot of sense. I mean, being a chef, I got into working with food because I saw how food nourished people and how their desire created this loop that inspired me to create things a little tastier, to find things as healthy as they could be and as delicious as they can be. And I would say that's exactly the thing that I'm currently doing as a sex educator, pleasure and intimacy guide, and curating people's desire, right? Like really helping them, what I call like find this unobstructed path to feeling desire emerge from their system. And so, that's exactly what happened for me as I kind of started asking questions. I had been running restaurants for almost 15 years, working in the industry. I had been, uh, working for 25 years in kitchens, starting out as a dishwasher and kind of like clawing my way up and deciding I didn't want to work for other people. And then, taking the huge obsessive leap to opening a restaurant and then, opening six more over the next 15 years and loved that. But it was really an obsession that I concluded, hopefully with grace, maybe not completely, but that was the aim. And as I was coming to the end of that, I was also had been teaching cooking classes for just about 10 years. And so teaching's always been something that's inspired me, bringing what I'm learning and sharing it with others. But I was struggling, that's the long and the short of it is I was struggling personally with my relationship to sex and intimacy, and I needed help. So I had, I think a lot of times for people that we work with, for men that come to our men's retreats, there has to be a certain cumulative life experience that generates the inertia to say, fuck, okay, I can't do this on my own. I can't do this with the tools I was modeled. I need some help from somewhere. And so, you are part of that story in that I witnessed someone that I know cross over into another realm, and I was tracking you, and I was like, fuck, how did you do this? Like, what is this, first of all? What are you doing? And then you being like, well, actually, one of the lead teachers is right in your backyard. And, that inspired me to reach out and inspired me to take this first step of my journey, which again, um, we did together, right? The intimacy educator training on Salt Spring Island. And
Mhm.
it was at that training that, the long and the short of it is I got some kind of like aha moment, let's say, to not make it too um, too woo, but truly it was like a divine intervention where when I put my hands on somebody's body and was guided to say, how would you like to be touched today? And sort of felt the offering that that was to them. I just realized, holy shit, I'm supposed to be doing this work and I have to sell my restaurant and change my life. And what I know is that in that 5-day arc for myself, when I was first asked that question, I just busted open. It was just like a blubbering mess. I remember there was like a towel under my table where the face hole was in my massage table, and it was just like snot and tears. And I was just like, I don't know. I don't know how I want to be touched. Who's ever even asked me that? Like, what are we even doing here? This is crazy. And it seems so simple, but it was so profound to me to center my body and the sensate awareness in my system to become the priority of someone else's attention. It just flicked a
Mm.
switch, and that switch has, went on to me taking the full somatic sex educator training and working with, supporting others in the Wheel of Consent workshops, and um, leading to my journey here that I've been on over the last 8 or 10 years with Back to the Body, sensual retreats for women, and developing the Apollo Project and the Himeros Project for men.
Beautiful. Yeah, there's something really profound and quite magical doing those little somatic check-ins of, wow, someone is actually asking me, my preferences and how I wanna be touched. How do I even want to be touched? I don't know. That is a similar story that comes up with so many other body workers. Because I remember Catherine, that was one of her earlier experiences too, of being asked that simple question and being able to drop in and actually feel it in the body. It's deep, it's rich. So from the
Yeah.
sexological bodywork training, that was like a year that we were all in that. You met Kasha, now your wife, and then you went right into a lead practitioner and Back to the Body. And and so, like,
Yeah.
explain, I guess for our listeners, um, what that looks like as a practitioner and what you do, at those retreats, what you offer. It's quite edgy.
Yeah. So how explicit can I be? Um,
We want all of it.
well, well, so yeah, so I did the training. I met Cash, my current wife, um, and colleague. We work in tandem together. Uh, Pamela Madsen, who runs and is the CEO and founder of Back to the Body, had gone to the school and asked, "Are there any male practitioners?" They were looking for new body workers, and had asked if anyone is kind of bubbling to the top who they might refer over. And so I went and did kind of a training, more like a tryout, where I flew down to Boulder, and basically they had four women come, and they you know had me work with a group of three other men on all four of these women, and then they got feedback from them and said, "What do you think? Are they back to the body material?" And these were already back to the body clients that were volunteering their time and their bodies and their presence to kind of help assess um, people's
Hmm.
competency. And I got lots of thumbs ups, which was great because it was a very unique opportunity. It is a unique opportunity to be invited into a company that is now going into our 15th or 16th year, of which I've been part of eight of those. And it might be the only job in the world that was able to provide me, a career as a sex educator doing this work, um, logging thousands of hours with hundreds of
Hmm.
bodies in a really immersive type experience. So immersion retreats, I'm a big advocate for. Um, I've done private work at home, and what I find is that when people kind of have to drive there and drive away, that there's a lot of catch up to do between sessions. So immersive work tends, in my experience, to be uh, give it enough time to kind of settle into the system and put life down for a minute. And so once, I got kind of the thumbs up from from the crew, I was put into two back-to-back retreats on the Big Island of Hawaii in January. I did this tryout in December. I graduated in September, and by January I was working. Um, at this point, I was still running my restaurant and
Wow.
teaching, and so I was kind of like juggling many a thing and trying to figure out, like, is this where I'm going? And I spent the following year negotiating the sale of that current restaurant, and about I was teaching for about another year, maybe year and a half in the sort of overlap. But yeah, I got put into two immersive experiences back to back. It was super intense. um, there was a little bit fake it till you make it. Like, you know, I felt confident, um, but I look back now with the experience and the thousands of hours that I've logged now, and I'm like, wow, that was a big leap.
Yeah.
That was a really big leap. Um, and so what do we do in session? Like I've spent a lot of time really refining down what I do, and I'll give you that versus like maybe what I thought I was doing
I'm
back
so
then.
curious what the
Um,
difference is, like what you thought you were doing and what you know you're doing now.
yeah. Okay, so back then it was like, to some degree, let me show up with the tools. So back then there was kind of three really specific tools. How would you like to be touched? More or less pressure, faster or
Hmm.
slower. Those were my like three guiding principles of what I was doing in session, and trying to um I think more back then I was trying to do a good job. I think that's what, and not to say that I'm not trying to do a good job right now, but I think it's become very clear that um, it's less about performing as a practitioner and more about inquiry into meeting the person and allowing them to express out and meet
Hmm.
that. Um, so there was an element, that's just naturally ingrained in our systems, especially in, social those socialized as males, men. this sort of performance element, like I want to do a good job. And that might have meant that helping someone reach orgasm meant it was a good
Right.
session. Whereas that's different for me now, where I don't have that target. That what I noticed is that I started to notice that bodies were feeling that I had targets and some agenda, that even though it might have been subtle, they were still embedded in my system. And I feel like the big difference is now I really don't approach bodies with any agenda. And that's a lot easier on my system. And it translates into a safer environment uh, for women and the men that I work with. But it is slightly different, and I'll get to that after. To feel the safety of the container, which allows their desire to emerge
Hmm.
organically. Whereas if agenda is in the room, it doesn't happen in the
Yeah.
same
For
way.
either
And
side,
so,
really.
y- y- yeah, I mean, there's something I've been playing with that I find a little different, like, and just like we'll go there, and then I'll go back to the other uh, piece around what I'm doing in sessions. But basically, like what I've noticed is that uh, female bodies, women often need safety before desire can emerge. And what I'm noticing with men is that they need to be able to express their desire in order to
Hmm.
feel safe.
Yep.
And that is like just a little, it's subtle, but it's an interesting thing I'm tracking. Is that true across the board? I don't know, but I am noticing that. So back to like what we're doing sort of right now, what I refine it down to is that, and I briefly touched on it, is I'm helping folks um, find some unobstructed path to express themselves, right? And if anything is an obstruction, we meet it, notice it, give it attention, care for it, and see if it wants to move or slide into the system in a different way. And as I've supported people in their expression versus repression of their emotional body, of their desires, um, then it becomes time to help them practice kind of containment,
Mm.
right? Because what I notice is that if we're supporting people expressing, right, because repression can have a very harmful, negative, calcifying, rigid effect on the body that promotes
Hmm.
aging and lack of wellness
Hmm.
across the board, right? Repressing emotions has a somatic impact on your life. And so we want to help express. But what I notice is that expression without containment can also have a very negative impact on your life
Yep.
and your system, right? And so this practice of containment, choosing when, with who, where, and how much you express of your true heart's desires, of your heart song, of your body's wisdom, it actually adds value to the expression. Over expressing devalues it because you might be bumping your expression off of people or in places where it's not welcome, it's not receptive, they're not interested. And so what happens then is that actually expression without containment promotes
Hmm.
repression
Do you want to give
because it drives you
Yeah, do you
back
wanna
in. Yeah.
give some, clear, like, zoom into a little bit on how that may show up? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give a personal one
Great.
because then,
Yeah, I'm thinking of
yeah.
some stories too, for myself and mhm.
So let's just say like, between Cash and I, if we're say negotiating some kind of poly dynamic, some recreational um, novelty play with somebody outside of our core relationship. And I'm like making breakfast for the kids and making lunches, and Cash comes up and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about going on a date tonight with somebody." And it's the first time I've heard about it. I might just go "Whoop," and kind of clam up and not be in a space where I'm prepared to have that conversation, which might be different than if she were to say, "Hey, let's go for a walk and we talk about some polydynamics or some
Yeah,
asks." Um, where I'm like, "Okay, I'm ready for a conversation." But if I do this and her system, who loves me and cares for me, notices I do that, then the likelihood of her wanting to share will
right.
decrease. So her expression will get kind of pushed back in, like, ooh, she'll feel my ouch. And naturally being a caring person who loves me, she'll be like, ooh, maybe I won't share that. And it's in that misplaced expression that things tend to get swept into the
Yeah,
shadows, right? Less conversations get had. And so by having like attentiveness and some containment about where and when and how we express, which, as you know, I've kind of got this six-part system called the anatomy of desire that kind of um, deconstructs this process of how to bring your desires to the world in a way that gives them like that values them and values yourself. You know that you matter enough to appropriate time for these things that are
right.
important. And so that's one little example, right? There could be tons. Um,
I love the
yeah.
anatomy of desire. I actually have it here on my desk, right here. Maybe
Oh,
we can
oh,
put it in the
nice.
show notes because I love that it kind of gives someone a system if they have a desire, whether it's to, play with someone outside the relationship or have a certain thing happen with a partner, whatever it is. There is a way to go about it so that you can just have a track for less harm and hopefully a successful, grounded conversation with those that it might impact. Yeah, so
Yeah,
we'll put that on the show
exactly.
notes because I often get clients that come in, that are like, "I just want this thing," and I'm like, "Great, have you paused and actually felt what it feels like in your body?" And they're like, "Well, no, I just have this thing," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll bring out the anatomy of desire that you created. I'll be like, let's roll through this and kind of role play what it would be like to bring forward to your partner so that it doesn't burn your house down. You can have a conversation because
Yeah,
sometimes desires live in fantasy, which is great. And just expressing it can be really healthy and beautiful. And then there's other desires that may not be in alignment with some values, shared values in the partnership. I mean, I'm sure we could just talk all about the anatomy of desire just all on its own, but it's fascinating when we
absolutely.
start unpacking it a little bit and giving people a system, they're like, "Oh, right. Okay, I didn't think about this." And so I feel like you learned a lot in the development of this, of like, how do we do this in a way with integrity and with a lot of like more embodiment and clarity around our desire. So
Yeah, and there's a cost, right?
always.
There's like, and it, you know, the and again, we won't spend too much time on anatomy, but the important piece is acknowledging that by allowing our desires to take up space in our bodies without necessarily needing them to be actualized in
Mhm.
our lives, oh, we just expend so much less energy trying to like block and hide our desires. So what if we just could allow all our dirty, weird, immoral, unethical, shadowy, whatever they are to just exist and have our filter well placed of what we value. I call it like the hierarchy of values at the gateway to our
Mhm.
behavior, right? So we allow our system to just be in this free flow. And then it's only when we want to translate it to behavior that we need to like really check ourselves. And of course, I absolutely believe that we need to check ourselves and can't just let our desires run our lives because, well, I don't even need to explain that. Like anyone that has
Yep.
done that, I have done that. I'm sure you have
Oh,
allowed
never, never
desires to just like
Cosmo.
take the lead, right? And they burn
Yep,
shit down. I call those like
yep.
fire desires, right? Which can be potent and powerful and help define your belonging in the world if they're uh, approached with the intentionality and consciousness that they deserve because desires are potent,
Hmm.
right? And they can burn shit down. And they can also sometimes burn shit down that leaves way for new growth. So it's, it's not to say that we want to be afraid of our desires. And I think that's a big part of the work that, um, that I'm committed to with people is not being afraid of who they are and having practice, some way to practice the experience. And what we do in session is, yeah, practice expression, practice bouncing it off of somebody, practice what it feels like to be with another body that feels grounded and is receptive to following your lead, to listening and see how you are
Hmm.
there, right? See how, and then they can take that and practice it on their own or with partners or with their husbands or wives or other people, important people in their lives. So the first step is, can I get it out? Right? Can I activate my throat? Can I activate my heart? Can I activate my genitals in a way that is unobstructed? And practice that with somebody whose job it is to hold space for people to
Right.
practice, right? And I mean,
Yep.
this, you do this.
And also, I'm often just kind of a neutral person in someone's life. They're not trying to have a sexual relationship with me. They're not trying to build a life with me, but I can hold the feminine. I can hold that pole and help them kind of feel and express and navigate and kind of talk through some of these things, which is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important piece, right? Is that we may be surrogate in the sense that we're there as, we're there to practice intimacy. We're there to practice the erotic. I mean, we get very intimate with the clients. We keep our clothes on. I'm not speaking for everyone in our field because some somatic sex educators can make their own rules. But in our containers, we keep our clothes on. Generally speaking, we're not doing sort of fluid exchange and penetration. We're not forming relationships and taking them away from their partners. We're not trying to, elicit this kind of long-term coupling dynamic with people, but we allow them to practice in intimacy. And we do it in a very hands-on, tangible way that brings it out of concepts and into the body, which is like you can talk about sex all day long. You can talk about relationship all day long. You can talk about intimacy all day long, and people have great fucking ideas about
Yep.
it. And when you put them in a room, that's when the rubber hits the road. That's when you see, okay, but do you understand? Does your body
Yep.
know this? And most of the time, people aren't practiced
Yep.
at it, no matter how much they have it up here. And they really require, it's not to say that the psychological element of sex education isn't as valid, but it needs to be physiologically woven together, right? They're two parts. And that's what we do is we offer that
Mhm.
opportunity to weave those
Mhm.
bits
Yeah,
together.
someone can come into the studio and say, I can't experience pleasure. Great, we can talk about it, but like, let's get into the body and notice in real time when it shows up, what's in the way, and come up with ideas.
Yeah.
And this is what I love about our work is it's not so clinical. Sure, there's some tools that a lot of us will use, but we can go into this very creative, quite playful space. I'm thinking of some of the
Yeah.
playful wrestling matches that I've gotten into because there was something that needed to, like, be worked out in that way. Um, or, speaking about, like, repatterning experiences, I'm curious, what are some ways, creative ways that you've worked with women in that dynamic, that had them be able to express in a new way or had an aha moment that maybe what wouldn't have been available had they just stayed in their mind or
Yeah. I mean that's a big part of um the work that I'm doing for sure is repatterning. And you know s- I won't say one of, but I'll because this has happened before, and I don't want to specifically talk about one particular session or something or one person's experience, but I have stood in really uncomfortable roles for people in order for them to harvest things that were lost because traumatic events experienced
Mhm.
simultaneously. So I'll describe what that means. So, life can, once we scratch under the surface in life, most things lead us to a paradox, right? And so in traumatic events, especially sexually abusive traumatic events, it's not everything in that event that is bad. At least this is what's been communicated. So I've had experiences where women have shared to me, okay, I had um, this traumatic experience with a man, and um, 8 out of 10 things in the experience were really beautiful. They were a really beautiful time, and part of the grief is around, and then he did this,
Mm.
and it ruined everything. And so I've done sessions lots of times where we recreate the dynamic to reclaim elements as building blocks of something they love and cherish and want for themselves and want to be able to experience with other people. And then go to the thing that went
Mhm.
wrong and add their
Mhm.
voice into it. Yep. Be able to say stop, be able to. So, you know, something that like even the traumatic experience itself done in a different way could be something they like, but now can't, prior to repattering or reclaiming it, can't even go close to it and can't no longer want to wear certain clothing or don't want to go out to even dating can sort of stimulate something or um, certain type of rough body play is a
Mhm.
no when that might be something that they want, but they want to be able to say, no, that's too much, like this, like give direction, have input, and then there's this flowering that can happen, this thriving. So there's a lot of beauty and power in reclaiming instances, experiences, moments where something went wrong, somebody wasn't listening, somebody didn't have the level of care that would have provided the safety and the beauty for someone else to really meet
Mhm.
them and wrecks a whole bunch of shit for
Yeah.
people, and then that ripples down into so many things. I mean, we see it in the world, and we won't go quite down that path right now, but the impact is generational. The impact goes down into our children. The impact goes down into how everybody relates. And so having care at those critical moments, and that's part of the work, and we can get to that later as well. The part of the work that I really feel so called and a responsibility and am inspired to bring to men is what I've learned from working with women that I also didn't know prior to logging thousands of hours of how to approach women in a way that allows space for both of us to flower and open up and have really fun, playful, intense, sexy, slutty experiences that allow this animal inside of us to come out that is wanted, but only once safety is established. And that's good for everyone to have that understanding. And so, you know, it's uh it's a lot of logged hours listening and learning. And there's some real gold that I've harvested from having the honor and the space to spend that much time with that many women, different bodies from different cultures, from different ages, to learn a lot more um, that are filling in a ton of blind spots that I had for most of my life up to
Wow.
40. And yeah, it's a big gift, and I feel a lot of honor and yeah, responsibility as well.
Mm, beautiful. So let's go into the Himeros project, was previously called the Apollo project. And your work with men, and these are a similar retreat as Back to the Body, but with men. A small group, 8 to 10 men, maybe 12, that are doing deep men's work with you and Ori Tahan. And then in addition to all of that, they get a sexological bodywork session with a female practitioner. Um, yeah, share a little bit about that container, what that looks like.
Yeah,
Because there's
thank
so
you. I
much
love it.
men's work happening right now. A lot of like camps and warrior training and this and that. And there's something really special and unique about the blending of what you and Ori are offering.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, for sure. So I'll hit it from kind of two angles, and I'll hit it from the men's work angle first, and then talk about, the hands-on work and why there's, just so much available in that isn't available in other work. And I don't even know that there's another container like what we're doing in this way. Um, because it's edgy, right? And it takes people who have logged a lot of hours to be able to hold space in that way, and it's risky for everyone to show up with that much attention to detail, that much acute awareness, and really go into the actual work with people's bodies, um, where they're in real time somatic
Uh-huh.
learning, right? So from a men's work perspective, again, tons of work, tons of great work out there. Um, I look forward to. I've got an agenda this year to go and participate because I do a lot of space holding, and so I'm looking um, for something out there right now that calls to me as a man to go and participate in. So that's something I've got on my radar. Um, and the one thing that I will be looking for in doing that, and something that we at the Apollo Project and Himeros Project really kind of draw a line in the sand, is if I feel like men's groups are telling men what men should be like, and the group is about training that into men, it's just distasteful for me. And maybe there are men that's like, oh, that's exactly what I need. Um, but I like to draw a line in the sand, and not to say one is better, just like you got to pick a lane, right? So my inquiry is not what men should be like, but what men are like. And so we're going into the retreat to understand men, to help them understand themselves, not in the socialized aspect that's laid on top of them of what you should be as a man and what is the burden that they're all carrying and what they're all trying
Uh-huh.
to be, but who they actually are under that. And so we provide a pretty intimate space for emotional sharing. We have lots of games and exercises and workshops that give space for men to uncover um, grief, frustration, anger, eros, desire, playfulness, curiosity about who they are, rather than trying to kind of overlay themselves into this socialized image of what they've been modeled men should be like. I just think there's enough
Right.
of that. Um, yeah, so that's the kind of men's group angle, is that we come together and we also use each other as a resource so that we learn to build bonds, emotional bonds with men to support each other and take some of the emotional labor that often, I know for myself, that men resource women
Uh-huh.
for back into their men's relationships. So instead of their male relationships being solely, we go and do things together, play sports, go to the pub, do different things, but they're actually coming together to resource each other for some of their emotional needs, which allows more spaciousness in the system to approach their partners on it. It's not to say that we should never talk to our partners about our emotional things. That would be ridiculous. But freeing up some space, giving some process with other men who share the same lens of the world to kind of add some balance. So when we approach our partners, we can be a bit lighter. It can be sexier. It can be more fun. It can feel like less of a burden on our partners to kind of carry all our labor of emotional tending,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like the container trains into the system naturally that, oh, actually other men are yearning to talk about their feelings too. It's just not part of a lot of our
Right.
socialization. And and once they show that, like, or they're shown that, then they go back home and a lot of men, message me after and they go, "Oh my God, I feel so much more comfortable with men. I feel so much safer bringing up these conversations because there was just a lot of hesitation, doubt, fear of judgment, fear of shame." Um, you know, we're constantly sort of force fed this idea of performance. And so there's a lot of grandstanding. There's a lot of Sure. like measuring and comparing against each other and trying to one up rather than being like, oof, I had a hard day. Oof, I
Mm.
fucked up. Oof, I failed at this. Oof. And then what it does is as soon as you drop down, you'd be so amazed how many men are just like, oh my God, bro, me too. Like, oh, and it permisses, right? It adds permission to other men to share in a different new way. And once they taste the flavor of
Mm.
that, it's like something you didn't even know you were looking for. Like, oh, thank God, you know? So that's the men's work bit. And then then they get this one-on-one time to go down and work with a female practitioner. And they take all the concepts and the somatic learning that they do in group and kind of harvest that and decide, okay, what's my particular journey that I am looking to work on for my body sexually, right? They're erotically inclined sessions where the men are invited to practice expressing their desires, to practice talking about their fears of intimacy, practice talking about their performance issues, practice, you know, um, acknowledging that their cocks don't always get hard when they want to, practice understanding sensate awareness and sensate focus in their body to find different pathways to pleasure that aren't completely objectifying. Now, that's not to say there's anything wrong with the male penetrative erotic directionality because male arousal is penetrative, it is outwardly focused, it is objectifying, but we're practicing this like objectifying with positive
Mhm.
regard and then also practicing receiving and bringing the awareness to like, oh, I like when my nipples are touched and my earlobe and someone whispers something slutty in my ear while tickling my asshole or something like that.
Yep.
Like you start to map the
Yep.
system and it gives them a map to go back and explain it to the people they're playing with. So it doesn't sex instead of is now like, oh, I got to show up hard. I got to show up and do a good job. And if I don't, I just feel shame and I kind of want to like hide and then I want to go to porn, which again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with porn, but as soon as it starts carrying the load of your erotic
Yeah.
charge, you're not able to bring that to your partner because you're afraid, you know, you're ashamed, you're feeling lesser than, and you're hiding. And when we can be like, oh, actually, there's like 100 things I like with my body that don't even have to do with me having a hard cock. And all of a sudden, this huge range of possibility opens up. And that doesn't mean that having a hard cock and fucking isn't fun, right? That's great. But it's like one wedge of the
Right.
pie. And like filling your heart and closeness and touching and tickling and scratching and biting and pushing and choking and slapping and spanking and tying and whipping and holding and loving and all these pieces like there's like I got goosebumps. I'm just like fucking is just this
Yeah.
little wedge and we put so much pressure on it. We have a multi-million dollar industry that just says this is how men should show up. And I'm rooting for men. I'm really rooting to help not teach them what they should be like, but be like, let's get to know ourselves so we can show up in relationship in a way that's just way funner. It's way more fun than just trying to perform. Because what I know is here's the thing, and this has been reflected to me a ton from men, is even when I teach them, okay, here's how you can more regularly get a hard cock. Here's how you can not have as rapid ejaculation. Here's how you can do some semen retention and just like really hold it in. Here's how you can show up as a dominant and masculine man. These are all things that I've like practiced in
Those are
myself.
common.
I
Yeah.
used to struggle a lot with,
Uh-huh.
right? These are common things. I've struggled with lots of them. And yes, I've learned those things. But when you show up to sex and you just like have your backpack of all the things you've learned, it basically becomes feeling like work because you're going in to do a good job, not to feel
Hmm.
good. It's a totally
Totally
different
different.
approach, right? If I'm going in to do a good job, I probably have the interest in having sex once or twice a week. And maybe that's even high for some people, right? When you add 4 kids and my work and tending the garden and cooking dinner and cleaning, da, 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 right? It's like, oh, I got to do another
Yep.
job, right? That I'm good at. But when I approach it like this is like connection and nervous system regulation and nourishing to my system and I want to feel good, I can go in and fucking play and touch every day because it's like food, right? It's not dessert, it's not a fancy experience. It's not like putting on all the armor and showing off. It's like nourishing. It's
Mm.
relaxing, not more work, which do we
No,
need more work? There's enough
there's enough
work,
things that we
you
need
know?
to do. Yeah. I love watching your stories, that you post with your wife, Kasha. There's, the 2 of you doing body painting together and doing the ropes, and do you wanna share just some of the things that the 2 of you kind of it seems like you schedule it in, and there's this
Yeah,
whole buffet of experiences available to you and your connection, your relationship than just showing up with a hard cock and fucking. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that you mentioned that because we really do prioritize the time, whether we feel like it's time for sex or not.
Just quality time that's on the schedule, does that
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So we make dinner, we clean up, we put the kids to bed, kind of check the boxes of the household, and then usually at 9 o'clock, we go into our bedroom almost every day, at least 5 nights a week, and we do something. We play. And, it might be like, okay, you got a game? You want to role play that you're uh, the neighbor across the way and you're about to be engaged, but you're like into this older man, or you're the younger man, and like we do age play in both directions. It
That's
doesn't
fun.
matter. One of us might be like, no, I just want it to be you. I want to have a really intimate, just like heartfelt connection. Great, let's do that. Might be like, oh, I want to feel really contained, so we might play with some rope. Last night we wrestled, and she'll say, you know, give me like let me win, but give me like 20%, right? So I'll kind of like just give a bit. Um, her favorite thing is to be drawn on or painted on, and so I like the texture of paint, so I'll often opt for that because I can kind of go into this meditative space and like make her my canvas, and I like the feedback loop where a canvas doesn't move, but she kind of like
Breathe.
breathes and kind of
Mm.
like sort of like makes sounds, which it makes painting even more
Mhm.
fun. And yeah, and so we or sometimes we have like like I like to think there's like food. This like daily stuff is like food, And then when we book like the studio or we book 3 days at a Airbnb or something, that's like dessert, where we'll have these like extended 3 or 4 hour play times where we take breaks and we go back in, and it's like, we might do a scene, we might play with power a little bit more, which takes like, this whole arc of an experience. I might get to express like deranged elements of myself that she allows.
Yeah.
So there's like there's both softness and real intensity that comes out when we craft time for those
And who gets
experiences.
to
And
decide? Say it's a weekday and you show up, the kids and the dinner is done, you show up. Does you just kinda organically, each mention something? I get this question a lot. There men that I work with are thinking, "Okay, I'm exhausted at the end of my day. I want you to think of something else." Or they feel stuck on,
Mhm,
"Okay, I'm not supposed to show up, but I'm still left to decide what we're doing and what the direction of the intimacy," and they get really caught in that space.
mhm. Well, yeah. So one, there should be something that just like works. You find that thing that works. Like Cash and I have a loop, an erotic loop that's like we've just laughed in times. We're both sex educators. We talk about promoting long, luxurious pleasure, but we have incredible sex in 12 minutes.
Well done.
Like we both come, we're both in pleasure, we're tweaking all the things. Like we can just like boop, 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 boop. It's like click, 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 click. And we're just like,
Unlocking each other.
oh, and then we lay yeah, we like, savor for 15 minutes, and in half an hour, we can have like a deeply nourishing erotic experience, right? And that's great. And so I call that food, right? And then the dessert is like these longer experiences. Generally, when we go and we say, like, what do you want to do tonight? It's kind of like, who has some inspiration, throw it in the pile. I would say, yeah, I don't generally have a huge issue coming up with things, but I feel like Cash might be more specific about what she's open to in that time. So I might say, well, okay, I'm open to a role play. What's a yes for you? Because I could go either way. I don't really care. Like something taboo, something we shouldn't be doing. Use the erotic equation, right? Which is um, attraction plus obstacle equals
Mhm.
excitement. So I'm a pretty easy animal. You throw me an obstacle, she's attractive, and I'll
Uh-huh.
get
Yeah.
excited. Like something I'm not supposed to do, right? It's an easy equation. Um, but I think thinking about it before you're in bed in the moment and having a little list, like spending some time, some intentionality around like what are 5 things you
Uh-huh.
tend to like. So if somebody says, "Well, you choose," you
I
go,
have a
"Great.
list.
I want I want you to play Dolly and let me use your body for." And then she might say, "Okay, but I want you to do some havening, some light, sweet touch on me for 10 minutes before I can surrender my body to you." So, like, have a system where you've done a little bit of like inventory on your desires. And that's part of what the work that we do with people on retreat is generating an understanding of their system. So when they go back to their partners or they go back into relationship of some sort, they can um, have a personal inventory of their system that then they don't feel. Because what happens when they feel the pressure is they kind of, you lock up a bit,
Right.
right? There's this like, oh, I don't want to do anything. Oh, this feels like
Right.
work. Oh, and people lock up. But if it's like, oh, you don't know what we should do? How about you crawl between my legs and put your mouth on my soft cock until it swells down your throat? Like that's fun. Like I don't, like that's on my
Right?
list.
I love that.
And and it might just, Cash's go-to is back tickles. Right? If I don't know what, it's like, okay, I'll just lay on me and tickle your back. And sometimes that's all we do. It's just like holding and,
Yeah, and intimacy can look so
yeah.
many different ways. I think that's the biggest teaching that I leave with clients is like it doesn't have to look like this slice that you were talking about. It can be back tickles or a light role play or fetishizing each other in a fun way or, a BJ, like whatever. Writing those lists and
Yeah.
understanding what really works for you and then where the overlap is and knowing that there can be a nice, playful negotiation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like, okay, so just I'll finish on this because this is good. So what we started with the Apollo project and the Himeros project is let's understand what men are like for themselves, right? So they can do this. They can bring this understanding of who they are to the world, and maybe they shift their experience of the world with a better understanding of themselves, both with other men and in their relationship to their body and sexuality, with very somatic practice experience over a week where the world dissolves,
Mhm.
right? They just get an opportunity to learn this. We also have monthly calls now that are offering alumni ongoing support to get reconnected with other men that have shared this lens, shared this experience. So that's really beautiful. Over the years, working in both the women's container and men's container, I'm constantly asked by both the women, can you teach our men to approach our bodies the way that you're approaching our bodies? Not me specifically, but with care, like as
Yeah.
practitioners, and to understand how to approach the female body a little differently. And I get asked by men, can you teach me how to approach a female body the way you're describing it? And so I've kind of just like been chewing on that for a while and basically have come to the conclusion that I'm now developing a bit of a system called the art of touching women, how men touch and why it matters. And the nutshell is competency isn't first. Women don't necessarily competency can be important, but care, presence,
Mhm.
attention, safety come first. And often men, when they're saying, how do you touch women? They're asking me, how do you finger or how do you tie or how do you whip? But competency is way down here. And so I'm developing a system, a 3-month program that approaches all the things, including some competency, but all the elements that come way before competency that can completely radically change the way you're approaching a woman's body and get you completely different results of how that experience will
Mhm.
feel for you.
Beautiful.
I see a little smirk
I'm so
there,
glad
Mango.
I'm so glad you're offering this because yeah, men often wanna know, like, how do I make her climax? How do I do the fingering technique? How do I make this happen? It's like, I love that you're taking it back to things that are often way more important for women. Not to put everyone in a category, but there's years of experience, thousands of bodies that you've worked with, feedback you're getting. Yeah,
Yeah. And I've practiced going in to try and do that thing. And what is felt, what I noticed is that an agenda is felt and a body goes into protection mode.
absolutely. I have that response.
And
Whoa.
if you can, yeah,
Yeah.
if you can create a space with no agenda, then desire naturally organically emerges, and then you can meet it with all the competency that yes, you can learn.
Yeah.
There is relevancy to competency for sure. Um, so here's the nugget. I'm offering basically a free 1 hour workshop that gives the fundamentals of some of this, and then a 3 months. So the part of the immersion work too is that it's not accessible for everyone, right? These are expensive retreats. We have professionals fly in. We're doing full hands-on work with a
Yeah.
full team. They're not cheap retreats. They're very valuable, but it's not accessible. So I also have been just like trying to figure out how to make this work more accessible to more people, more men. And so offering this free workshop that anyone can come to and get some bits. Then a very accessible 3-month virtual course that again will get into this deep dive of how to go about this with some demos. Cash is going to play with me. We're going to show some competency, but a lot of the other stuff as
Mhm.
well. And then The newest version is that looking at July for 26 of actually doing the Art of Touching Women as its own immersion
Amazing.
retreat. And so that's kind of the nuggets that are coming up in
I love it.
2026.
Cosmo, thank you so much for joining me today.
My absolute pleasure.
How can people find you? And we'll also post all these links in the show notes of how people can find you for the upcoming workshop in early December, that free one. And if they want to do a deep dive, they can do that. Yeah, how else can people track you down?
The easiest way is Himeros Project, which you'll put the
Yep.
link in, I'm sure. Himerosproject.com. It's him, Him, Eros, Eros project. And backtothebody.org. So if you're female bodied, if you're a woman and you're looking to do immersive work, um, that I work in that container doing as a practitioner. And if you're a man, male bodied, and actually we're considering including trans men too if they're interested. Um, the Himeros Project, and we have two retreats for that for men in 2026. We have March in Joshua Tree, California, from March 3rd to 9th, and in BC up here in Canada, July 15th to the 21st. The virtual course is April through beginning of July. And as you mentioned, I'll probably be doing one of these a month. So if you go on and add yourself to the mailing list on Himeros Project, you'll get kind of a notification about when the free workshops are happening. And the first one is December 3rd, 25. So that's a little snapshot. And thanks for having me,
Yeah.
Mango. It's been
Aw.
sweet,
Thank you so
super
much,
sweet.
Cosmo. And I look forward to seeing you soon.